Joining us now, and I'm delighted they're with us, Alex Marlow, the great Jason Miller. Both of you fabulous Americans. Couldn't think of anyone I'd rather spend time with at the end of the year. Alex, we saw a lot of infighting over the weekend, some interesting debates, important issues, but I think that tends to obscure the huge progress that has been made by Trump in 2025. Your reaction to what I just said in the angle, disagree with me if you want. I'm fine with that, too. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, you really laid out a lot there, Laura, that I absolutely loved. And I think I agree with your take on the infighting. I think a lot of it's performative. It's sort of looking like Real Housewives of MAGA all of a sudden. And it's very strange that's happening and counterproductive unless you're trying to just grow podcasts and stuff, which I respect. It's a business, whatever, but it's not essential. What is essential is that if Donald Trump had not won, what we'd be going through right now, the lawfare superstructure will have vanquished our biggest chance to save America. And instead, we'd be looking at more inflationary policies, a bunch of more deficit spending instead of seeing inflation going down. We'd have a border that's open instead of no new crossings. We would have no most favored nation policy with drug companies, so big pharma would continue to run over us that we're seeing. We would have no bombing of drug boats. We would have the media still with credibility, which has been totally vanquished. Donald Trump has accomplished so much, but just thinking about the border, Laura, you and I were on the front lines 10 years ago. We've seen the most progress in the last year as we've seen in the history of this country on that issue. How about tariffs? They told us it was all going to be inflationary. Inflation is coming down. We've got tens of billions in revenue coming in. This is all thanks to Donald Trump resetting America in this regard. It's historic, and it's only going to get better.
Jason, at the same time, you can sense that there is a lot of pressure being put on the White House to moderate, to bend on core issues that he won on in 2016 and he won on again in 2020. On the issue of immigration especially, how important is it for them to go full steam ahead on the way they've done this and, if anything, pick up the pace?
Well, it's extremely important because that was such a key central issue of the president's campaign in 2024. And when you look at 2025, they really could sum it up in 4 words: promises made, promises kept. And that's what's driving the Democrats so crazy right now. It's what's causing them to cry in their gluten-free eggnog or deliriously make non-binary snow angels out in the front yard, is President Trump has delivered for all Americans, whether they voted for him or not. You take a look at the receipts that you and Alex pointed out. The border is secure. Pride in America is back. And we went from an economic doom under Joe Biden to an economic boom with President Trump. You look at that middle-class tax cut bill, it's going to put about an extra $13,000 in the pockets of every family. We see inflation, which they told us was permanent, being brought down to record lows. And I think what we're going to see in Q1 and Q2 of next year is going to really take off like a rocket ship and help all Americans.
Alex, and I think about recent years. I mean, no one gets everything they want. I mean, politics is the art of the deal. I mean, the art of the deal, you have to compromise on some things. But on core beliefs, Trump has been, I can't think of a president who's been better on the core issues that matter to this country than he has. Is it everything I want? Absolutely not. But guess what? I didn't win the presidency 2 times. I didn't come back from attempted assassination, people trying to put him in jail. And the story of this year, just the fact that he's there and fighting every day, people have got to, these are kind of the good times right now. And if people don't think these are the good times, wait till if the Democrats win in 2026.
I love the fighting. I love how he trolls people. He always baits people with these 97-3 and these 80-20 issues like bombing drug boats. And he's got the left and the media in knots, as always. And that's such a delight to watch. We really do need to enjoy it. But just think about how hard it was that first term when the Republican establishment co-opted some of the administration. And think about what we'd be looking at now. We'd be looking at tax hikes coming in next year instead of tax cuts. We'd be looking at, for our crowd, for you, me, and Jason, debanking, deplatforming, going to jail perhaps just for holding our political beliefs, all of that stuff, transgender for everyone, all the things that the Democrats would be focused on right now. Instead, we've got this ascendant MAGA agenda. And look at what a mess they are with tampon Timmy Walz and Gavin Newsom and his ridiculous hand gestures. I mean, they have nothing. They're completely behind the 8 ball now. They have all these leftist radicals. Eric Swalwell, who's leading that party?
Yeah, if Trump bends on any of his key views, they're just going to be doing the Snoopy dance, celebrating, and be like, if we got him to bend on that, we have him over a barrel. That's why he's not going to do it. Jason, really quickly, they are doing specific things, too, that are really important, like the scam of the wind farms. Great news today that they're suspending that Vineyard Wind project off of the Atlantic. That is a total outrage and a scam. I exposed it in unique exclusive video over the summer. It's mostly foreign companies, foreign interests own these things, destroying our oceans, total national security problem. And guess what? They're saying, no, we're not doing this. I think it's brilliant, and it goes right to the heart of the green energy scam.
Absolutely. And you look at the $9 billion or so that Russ Vought, who runs OMB, was able to go through and surgically remove in certain places. Of course, the DOGE effort, the Elon Musk went in and helped President Trump cut out these massive chunks. By stopping this reckless spending, that's one of the biggest things of why we've been able to get inflation under control and go and bring that down, because we're going right off a cliff with Joe Biden. But these cuts that we're able to make against these wasteful programs, this is transformed completely American business. Now businesses are talking about CapEx growth of some 15% this year, which means more investing back in the companies, more jobs, higher paying jobs, instead of going to these ridiculous things like wind farms. And think of the poor whales, think of the poor birds. I think that should explain it right there.
I think the best is definitely yet to come. But, man, considering this thin majority and everything he has to deal with, this has been an unbelievable year. People should be in a really good mood. I think they're going to get in a better mood next year. Alex, Jason, you've been a huge part of this. Thank you very much. Have a great holiday.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.